Good morning. Got slides? Yes. Happy days. So we are wild-natured. We're on a bit of a mission to make nature regeneration rewarding. And I guess by that, what I mean is that, of course we want to conserve nature for society and for the health of our planet, but also we need to make sure that we deliver the funding for all the hard workers, the conservation charities and the companies and the designers and everyone who deliver those projects. So that's been our focus. When we started a few years ago, we recognized there's a bit of a gap in the market, really. You sort of had ecologists who are really good at the sort of the nature side of things, or you had commercial consultants or planning consultants or technologists, but very few who could bring all those together. So that was kind of where we focused. That's where Rachel and I, when we met, and we sort of thought, where do we want to place our effort? That's kind of where we focused our sort of efforts into and our work. So as a little bit of an introduction, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rachel. Nice to meet you all. So my background is in large-scale development, historically in renewable development. There's a lot of parallels between the renewable environment 15 years ago and the nature space. So I've swapped megawatts for habitats and take projects, de-risk them for investment.
Thanks, and I'm Dave Cagill, so I've got a background more in the kind of corporate sustainability space, so getting all those evil megacorps to deliver on their net gain net zero strategies or on their nature positive strategies, or generally trying to make sure they do the right thing as corporate citizens. So and started there, but then realized actually working in that world is very, very slow, and you just end up making a lot of PowerPoints. So we've much more agile startup now, where we get to take projects right the way through from concept right into spades in the ground. So we're super proud of all our clients and partners. Today we're going to talk about a specific case study from the City of York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority, where we've been helping them create a green asset bank. But we've also worked with a few other local government type organisations, so the City of London, working on their Epping Forest buffer lands, for example, helping them build a natural capital strategy and develop a habitat bank, and a few other kind of corporates up there as well. Oh, Wild Farm, so you might know Andy Cato, he was on Clarkson's farm, and he was also obviously from Groove Armada, so working with their test farm at Collymore to help them build a natural capital strategy that generates revenues alongside their regenerative farming. So if you want to talk about any of that, come and see us at the stand. But yes, as I say, let's talk about this case study for North Yorkshire and the City of York. So when they came to us, like many local authorities, they had a sort of common challenge. They had increasing responsibilities and dwindling resources. A lot of their sort of budgets being cut. They've also declared a climate emergency, and they're facing into climate resilience issues. And they've lots of waterways and lots of lots of flood issues. So they need to provide lots of high quality green space. They need to adapt to climate change, and they need to sort of address their carbon emissions, of course. So they had this challenge, limited budgets, but I guess we sort of saw that as a potential opportunity, and it's the same for many, local authorities, that there is this kind of opportunity. They have a lot of land holdings. They already manage land for the benefit of society and for nature. So actually, there's a probably opportunity of turn their natural capital assets into financial assets and start to generate revenues for them. So that's the approach we took, and we started to think about how we can, through investment into their assets, they can... Ooh, I didn't put this on, maybe I did. There we go. They can start to generate co-benefits. Now, one of the other speakers talked a lot about this. When you start to regenerate nature, you do generate sort of benefits that sit alongside those. So things like access to nature, things like climate resilience. And it was a sort of process that we went through to help them understand really and prioritize which were the right assets that they could sort of get the best returns from. So Rachel, take us a little bit more how they did that.
Thanks. Yes, so on this particular case study, so York and North Yorkshire, like many councils, owned over 350 sites, maybe even more, lots of like big, small, all sorts of different sites. So our first job was to shortlist those sites. Obviously, managing our resource, initially that starts with a digital process. So we look at this both from a bottom-up and a top-down perspective. So from a bottom-up perspective, what does that look like? Thinking about the land and what it can deliver from an ecosystem perspective. So layering in digital maps and also having stakeholder conversations to determine what can that site actually do for us? So an example might be, is there an existing habitat that's already there that we can enhance? We've talked about rivers, that's a great opportunity there. Also, are there any constraints? So is there a flood risk issue there that we could mitigate through nature? But then thinking about top down, so one of the biggest challenges is that a lot of ecosystem services don't have revenue streams. Thanks, James, for sort of already prompting and entering us into this investment conversation. But where we really focus is having those top down conversations. So is in an urban context as well, like this, we have a lot of development, so there's obviously access to BNG markets, but also thinking about your critical infrastructure, roads, rail, water. In Yorkshire, for example, one of our projects, we were working with Yorkshire Water, and they had surface water regulation issues, so we could attenuate and hold water to stop them from having effluent come out of their sewer systems, which they'd pay for. So once we've gotten to that stage of shortlisting, we think we've got a project, the site can deliver, and we've also got some revenue streams, then we need to get on site. And that's where we can maximise our opportunities. So in York and North Yorkshire, we had 6 sites, and we got ecologists on site to look at the correct surveys, whether that be UK Hab for BNG, or maybe something more specific like hydraulic modelling in a flood situation. And once we've got that sort of detailed granular level data, we can start building up that cost database. So whether that be from how much it's going to cost for us to install it, but also that really detailed view of who's going to pay for what. Is it corporates? Is it big business? And then we can do modelling to assess, what's your cost benefit, and will these projects actually make an economic revenue, which is obviously so important in creating that asset bank and making these land parcels work for councils rather than against, in a nature positive way.
Thank you. When we start thinking ahead to the markets we're going to access for these land parcels, there's essentially 3 of them that we wanted to think about. So you've got your sort of formal markets, your Biodiversity Net Gain, obviously sort of statutorily mandated, but you've also got your carbon credits. There are markets and a sort of standard around it. But there's also climate resilience markets. We talked about natural flood management, talked about NFM. So there's ways to sort of access payments, perhaps bilateral agreements, specifically with, for example, water companies quite frequently, or asset owners in those more climate resilience shaped markets. And then your social co-benefits, which are sort of harder to commercialise, but there certainly are payment opportunities there. So for us, when we looked at BNG, that would kind of underpin most of the revenue modelling with this green asset bank. So there are circa 200 units of ranging from sort of 21k for your grasslands up to 125k for your watercourse units, because we were lucky enough to have some good watercourse opportunities. There was no nutrient neutrality zone in this particular region, and a lot of the sites were too small for carbon credits to make them sort of economically viable. So Biodiversity Net Gain certainly was underpinning it, and there's, with all the housing targets, there's plenty of demand in the area. When it came to climate resilience, then as Rachel mentioned, we had a sort of early conversations, in principle agreements with Yorkshire Water, which was brilliant. They were really open, and we were able to then compare their GIS data with our data and try to work out the right sites that were going to be appropriate for that. There's, flood risk is a huge challenge in the UK currently at the moment. 6.3 million houses under threat of flooding. Fire risk is obviously huge. It's hard to remember in these kind of seasons, but last year I know for certain that Hertfordshire Fire Service were 100% committed at one point because all of their units were out dealing with wildfires. So it's clearly a problem that's not going away. And then when it came to social resilience, we had, we wanted to improve air quality. It was an urban pilot. We wanted to enable active travel and so on. So where appropriate, using our GIS systems, we kind of model demand. Where is there sort of a lot of urban and built-up environments that would mean people actually want to have a place for active travel, or need sort of open space to provide a bit of sort of wellness within the community. So, being a local authority, they're not 100% prioritising the revenues. It's often about how do we manage and balance those co-benefits. So just sort of final slide, the conceptual model of kind of how the Green Asset Bank works. We can talk to you about it in more detail if you want to pop over, but essentially, you know, this is just trying to visualize how ecosystem services and flows can be paid for by buyers, so that you've got financial flows in return for those to pay for the operational costs. And then if there is a need for capital costs to set up that Green Asset Bank, then raising money from community investors, for example, to pay for habitat establishment costs. So there are great models now like local climate bonds or CMI's, community municipal investments, that allow local authorities to raise funds so it's cheaper than the public works bond. So there's a whole sort of set of models that can sit behind this, and we'd love to chat to you about them. So thanks very much.